tusimame pamoja kulinda uhuru na umoja wetu. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika. Chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima.
Beautiful introduction to the show. A very beautiful introduction to Humanist TV Africa shows. That is the theme song for Africa. Africa Unite. Africa, let's work together. We are sons and daughters of the sun and the skies of Africa. That is our song. That is the song that introduces shows at Humanist TV Africa going forward. My name is Kato Mukasa. I want to encourage you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also a Facebook name, which is Humanist TV Africa, but also I'm encouraging you to please write to us. Write an email to us at info@humanisttvafrica.com. Also send us a WhatsApp message at +254 74 73 56 76 7. Send us a message, and of course, we shall be able to get back to you. Our spokesperson, Brian Kabeko, will be able to respond to you. Of course, Aden Bunga in Uganda will be able to send you feedback about what we do. We are looking for volunteers, and we want to open up more studios in the world. You are in Singapore, you are in the US, you are in Japan, you are in India, you are in America, you are in Asia, wherever you are in Africa. We want to welcome you to work with us. We are opening up studios there. We have physical studios in Uganda, we have studios in Kenya, we have studios in Zambia, Zimbabwe, we have studios in Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, we have studios in the UK, we have studios in the US, and we are opening up more studios throughout the world. This is Humanist TV Africa. Our intention is to empower you as we empower us, to educate you as we educate us, to inspire you, to motivate you, and to progress together. This is Humanist TV Africa. And today, something very important about Africa and the giants of Africa. Profiles on African regions. Profiles on African regions. And we are looking today at Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o, the master of literature, the greatest writer from East Africa. That man made me who I am. His works, especially 3 books of his, Petals of Blood, actually 4 books of his that made me really a thinker as a child. Number 1 was Weep Not Child. Number 2, The River Between. Number 3, Petals of Blood. And number 4, Decolonizing the Mind. Today, we are talking about Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o, a professor of the works, a writer, a thinker, an elder, a translator, a teacher, a professor, an educator, a revolutionary fighter, a man who was forced to go away free from Kenya by dictator Arap Moi, a man who ran away from his own country because of the pain, because of the power of the pen, a man who never left prisoners. So leave no prisoners. He doesn't care. He would write and criticize the government of Kenya, but also expose the rot in Africa. Welcome to Profiles on African Religions, and today we are talking about Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. Thank you, Dennis. We are going to be looking at these photos. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o was born in 1938. Specifically, was born on the 5th day of January 1938. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is an elder who's 86 years old as we speak. He has been a writer since 1962. You can't imagine 60 years of writing. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is known as a literary giant of Africa, a social commentator, a top thinker from Africa, a translator who translated his books from English to Gikuyu. Such a lovely writer. He made sure that his books are translated from English to Gikuyu. Why did he do that? He was challenged by Chinua Achebe, who told him, I think you don't love your language so much. Why don't you write in your own language? So he said, look, I'm going to start writing in my own language. And one book, Matigali, which will be seen, was actually written in the Gikuyu language. And he changed more other books into his language. He's a top thinker, a teacher, an educator, and a guy who is considered as a leading novelist from East Africa. And of course, you can only compare Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o with the likes of Chinua Achebe, with the likes of Alechi Amadi, with the likes of Wole Soyinka, with the likes of Okot Pibitek. You can only compare Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o with those likes of giants. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is also known as the man who switched from writing English to writing Gikuyu. He wrote essays, he wrote literary and social criticisms, he wrote about children's literature, by the way. And for 60 years, the man you see on the screen has been writing the best stories, the best commentaries, the best articles from Africa. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is a master of storytelling. He has the mastery of storytelling. He has been known as a social critic of bad regimes in Africa. He was criticizing Kenya. He was criticizing Uganda. He was criticizing Mozambique. He was criticizing DRC Congo. Ngũgĩ has been known to speak against dictators in Africa. Ngũgĩ is a social critic, a cultural expression writer, the vanguard and champion of indigenous language in East Africa, and is the guy behind cultural decolonization of Africa. I'll repeat it. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is the man behind cultural decolonization of Africa. He's the man behind linguistic decolonization of Africa. When he said linguistic decolonization, what do we mean? A person who says enough is enough of speaking English. We are tired of speaking and writing English when we neglect our own languages. Ngũgĩ said, I've done enough damage promoting English. Now I must promote my local language, Gikuyu. He translated his books from English to Gikuyu. That was a plus. And he called it linguistic decolonization. He said, I have promoted English far enough. I must promote my own language, Gikuyu. He began writing in Gikuyu, and he wrote books for children. Ngũgĩ is a philosopher. Ngũgĩ is a top thinker, a socio-political landscape of post-colonies of the global south is described as a socio-political landscape of post-colonies of the global south. When you talk about Africa, there's no way we cannot talk about Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. And what are the themes that Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o addresses in his books? Oppression. Ngũgĩ talks about oppression throughout his books. Petals of Blood, for example, in the Petals of Blood, Ngũgĩ talks about triumph over bad governments in Africa. And Ngũgĩ inspires you when you read Petals of Blood. It tells you bad governments must be overthrown. People wonder, why did Arap Moi hate Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o? Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o was saying the government in Kenya must fall. And he wrote it in books, and he went to radios, and he went to TV saying Moi is corrupt. The government in Kenya must fall. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o was forced to go into exile because Moi wanted him dead. That's how important it is to know about Ngũgĩ. Ngũgĩ never ate his words. Ngũgĩ wrote, and Ngũgĩ inspired the likes of me to write and speak out. In The River Between, for example, Ngũgĩ talks about connecting the cultural gaps between our past and the present. In that book, Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o, The River Between simply is the book, is a novel where Ngũgĩ talks about culture and shows you why we must not copy Western culture, why people in Africa must be proud of their African culture. Read between The River Between, which I taught for years. In that book, the main message is culture. We must bridge the gap between our own culture, the past and the present. Let us not copy European culture. That's the message in The River Between. Very important book to read. Now, he has been writing so many other books. Dennis, show me other books. I'll be talking about them. I've been writing more about other books. Show me another book. I'll be talking about it. Ngũgĩ talks about struggles. I love this book. If you ask me, among Ngũgĩ's books, which is the best book you are going to vote for, I will vote for Weep Not Child. It's a wonderful book. You haven't read it? Please go and read it. I read it as a student, but also I read it as a teacher because I taught that book. Weep Not Child. That book has been taught in 18 African countries. That book has been taught in 18 African countries. Weep Not Child. What do we see in Weep Not Child? In that book, Ngũgĩ explains to you the struggle against colonialism. In that book, Weep Not Child, Ngũgĩ explains to you the struggle against colonialism. And which colonialism? British colonialism. He was telling people in Kenya, look, rise up and fight the imperialists. Rise up and claim what's yours. In that book, Ngũgĩ talks about British colonialism and tells Kenyans to fight colonialism and chase the colonists away. That's why I love that book. It's a book of self-determination. It says we must fight and claim our land. We must fight and claim our culture. We must fight and win against colonialism. That's why that book has been taught in 17 countries in Africa. They are teaching African children to think and claim their independence. Weep Not Child. Do not simply cry. Go and fight for independence. That's the book. It tells Africans to go and fight for their independence. That's why I respect Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. He is a revolutionary writer. He told us to fight for what is ours. In that book, Weep Not Child. Then it's another book. Devils on the Cross, another masterpiece from Master himself, Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. What does Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o tell us in the book Devils on the Cross? In Devils on the Cross, Ngũgĩ brings out voices of rebellion and the need for change in society. Again, just like Weep Not Child, this is the continuation. It tells you, fight for your independence, people in Africa. You must rebel against colonialism. You must rebel against imperialism. That is the book Devils on the Cross. It tells you we must rebel and get the change. It tells you even if you get new presidents in Africa, once they begin to misbehave, you must rebel against them. Devils on the cross. Let us become the devils on the cross and we fight for our own rights. That's the meaning of that book, Devils on the Cross. We must pick up arms and rebel against bad regimes and rebel against colonialism. That's the book, Devils on the Cross. So ask me, Why do you love Ngũgĩ? Ngũgĩ taught me to be rebellious. He told us to be rebellious, to move and fight for what is ours. That's why Moi hated Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. He was a fighter. Then, next book, The Grain of Wheat, another masterpiece by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. What do we learn from The Grain of Wheat? In The Grain of Wheat, Ngũgĩ sowed seeds of revolution again. He talks about politics. Grain of Wheat is sows seeds of fighting. Ngũgĩ, I told you, is a revolution writer. Ngũgĩ is like Mark Sheva. Ngũgĩ is like these American inspirational, motivational speakers. Ngũgĩ was a fighter. Ngũgĩ was like Karl Marx in a way. Ngũgĩ is a revolution writer in so many ways. Was like Junior, Michael Junior, and others. You know, in that book, Grain of Wheat, Ngũgĩ says in that book that we must sow seeds of revolution, politics, overthrow bad regimes and tyranny. Martin Luther King said certain words that Ngũgĩ puts in that book. Ngũgĩ says words Karl Marx said so many years ago. Ngũgĩ tells people in Africa to rise up and overthrow bad regimes and tyranny. He says you must wake up and sow grains of wheat. You must raise up and sow seeds of discomfort and you fight bad regimes in Africa. Ngũgĩ, I told you, is a terrible writer. His main theme is oppression and revolution. He talks about struggle for independence, struggle for self-identity, struggle for culture preservation. Those are the themes Ngũgĩ writes about. Then his next book, Mitigali, another book from Ngũgĩ. What does Ngũgĩ say in Mitigali? Ngũgĩ says that truth and justice must be fought for. In that book, Mitigali, the main thing I got from it was that if you're going to get justice, if you're going to get freedom, it will never come through peace alone. It will never come on a platter. You are going to work for it. You are going to fight for it. Ngũgĩ, as I told you, is a guy who talks about revolutions. He talks about fighting. He doesn't talk about prayers. Ngũgĩ actually discourages prayers. Ngũgĩ is a humanist in a way. He discourages the power of prayers and tell you, do not pray. Wake up and fight. That's why Moi never liked Ngũgĩ. Ngũgĩ told Moi, people are going to fight. They are not going to pray. They are going to fight you. So, Mitigali is a book for seekers of justice and truth during a struggle. Seek justice, seek truth whenever there is a struggle. Be accountable, be reasonable, but fight on in a struggle. Next book, Dennis. Moving the Center is yet another beautiful book from Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. Now, Moving the Center is more of an essay, if you ask me, but also Moving the Center is more of a book that you can read in line with the Perfect Nine, in line with the short stories like Secret Lives, in line like Wizard of the Crow. That's the book you can actually read along those lines. Now, Moving the Center is more of politics. It's more of decolonizing Africa. It's more of identity politics and how we can use it to unite our people. It's more of a philosophical book right there. Dennis, another book, please. Wizard of the Crow, another book from Ngũgĩ, shows the collapse of Kenya governments. In that book, Ngũgĩ was hated by the regimes in Kenya because he was saying that Kenyan governments have failed. In fact, Ngũgĩ called Kenya a failed state. He said that the government in Kenya is the collapsed one. You go and read Wizard of the Crow, you will know why Ngũgĩ was hated by the politicians in Kenya, because he told them is a failed government. The Collapse of Kenyan Politics is here. Wizard of the Crow is another book you should look out. Next, Dennis, The Perfect Nine. I talked about it. In The Perfect Nine is an epic story recounting the struggles of our ancestors. In that book, Ngũgĩ talks about our ancestors in Kenya, our ancestors in Africa. How did the Mau Mau fight for rebellion? How did the Mau Mau fight the British to get their independence? Lastly, how did the British mistreat the Mau Mau? The Perfect Nine is a book to show you the struggles the ancestors in Kenya went through to have their independence. Ngũgĩ tells you basically in his books that independence is not got on a silver plate, you fight for it. That's the message in Ngũgĩ's books. You fight. You cannot simply play or pray your way to success. You are going to work for it. This is what Ngũgĩ tells you in those books. Then his next book, Decolonizing the Mind. One of my best books from Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is called Decolonizing the Mind. I read it about 15 years ago, and it changed my thinking. Decolonizing the Mind is a wonderful book by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. As you hear it, it says, do not be taken away by Western culture. They have poisoned our mind. We think their cultures are better. We think their education is better. They have poisoned our thinking. Let us decolonize our mind. Let us reclaim our cultural identity. Let us reclaim our values as people in Africa. That's the book, Decolonizing the Mind of the African Child. It's a great book. I must recommend. Ngũgĩ wrote there beautiful. Then it's another book, please. Another book, please. Something Torn and New. Something Torn and New is yet another beautiful essay. Actually, I can say it's a play, in a way, a play by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. It's a play on rebellion and, of course, enduring resistance. Ngũgĩ wrote plays, of course, The Black Hamite, and then This Time Tomorrow. Of course, Something Torn and New, more of an essay. In the same measure with Homecoming, in the same measure with Trial of Dedan Kimathi. More of devotional essays from Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. Then next, Dreams in the Time of War. Dreams in the Times of War. It's more of an essay. Those essays that came out from Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. Very, very, very important essays. You can call them short narrative books, but also moving books from Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. And as you can see, war, revolution, this is the themes that Ngũgĩ handles. War, revolution, rebellion. Themes that Ngũgĩ handles beautifully in his works. Dennis Knox, next work, please. Yes, Petals of Blood, I've explained that. I said that in the Petals of Blood, what does Ngũgĩ say? Ngũgĩ talks about Petals of Blood. It shows triumph over bad governments and overthrow of bad regimes. When you read Petals of Blood, there is blood. Ngũgĩ talks about fighting. I told you, why was Ngũgĩ hated? Ngũgĩ talked about war, talked about revolution, talked about rebellion. Ngũgĩ told people in Kenya in the year 1988 to rebel against Moi. The year was 1988. Ngũgĩ told Kenyans to rebel against Moi following the Morogoro elections, I think. The year was 1988, I remember very well. Ngũgĩ telling Kenyans to rebel against the sitting government. Petals of Blood was such a very important book because in that book it tells Kenyans that, look, triumph over bad governments is possible. You can actually fight and change a government. That's why Ngũgĩ was hated by Arab Moi, and that's why Ngũgĩ was forced into exile. Very good book. Petals of Blood doesn't talk about peace. It talks about war and shedding blood, and that was Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. It talks about war. He says we must fight, and he puts it on paper, and he goes on TV and says we must fight. That is Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o for you. Then it's another book. Ngũgĩ wa River Between is finished. Now give me the other books which come in droves, and we're done. Yeah, these are collections of essays by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. He wrote so many essays such as The Trial of Dedan Kimathi, Homecoming. He wrote plays such as The Black Hermit, and of course, This Time Tomorrow. Those are plays he wrote. He wrote short stories such as The Meeting in the Dark and Secret Lives. Then let's move on and show me other works if you have any. And if you don't have, then we are done, I should say. Ngũgĩ Thiong'o is a great philosopher, and of course we call him a philosophical luminary of Africa, a literary giant of Africa, a social commentator, a thinker, a translator, a teacher, an educator, an elder from Africa. Then if you are done, I'm done with Ngũgĩ Thiong'o. I've just given you a brief about a great man from Africa, of course from East Africa, a man who said, I have promoted English for a long time. I'm going to promote my own language, Gikuyu. He began writing books in Gikuyu and said, I have done enough to promote English language. I'm going to decolonize my people's mind, and I teach them in Gikuyu. To me, that was a plus. I'm a victim because I've never written anything in Uganda or in my mother language. I promote English. Ngũgĩ Thiong'o was saying, no, I have promoted English for a long time. I must write something in my local language. Decolonize our identity, the mind of an African person. English is not a measure of understanding, it's just a language. If I write it, that's okay. But I can write in Uganda. Ngũgĩ went ahead and wrote in Gikuyu. Ngũgĩ had a discussion with Chinua Achebe, and Achebe was criticizing Ngũgĩ for neglecting the local language. So Ngũgĩ said, I'm going to start writing books in Gikuyu, which he did successfully. Thank you so much, Dennis, for this show. Ngũgĩ still lives, great man, 86 years, top thinker, top elder, inspirational. Ngũgĩ taught me revolution, taught me we must fight bad governments. Petals of blood, weep not child, the river between. Ngũgĩ talks about fighting. We must fight bad regimes in Africa. Number 2, we must chase imperialists from Africa. We must claim our motherland. That was the message in Ngũgĩ Thiong'o's book. Thank you so much for the show. It has been great having you. See you in the next one as we do profiles on legends from Africa. The song that
Tuungane sote na tushereke pamoja ushindi kwa ukombozi wetu. Tujitoe wenyewe, tusimame pamoja kulinda uhuru na umoja wetu. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibi